All right, in this next video, this technique is something that I've been doing a lot to defend this position in certain circumstances. I don't see anybody else do it, so it's one of those things that I want to just kind of have a little asterisk next to it where I want you guys to play with this, try it, and let me know your results with this. And obviously, if there is some gaping hole that I am missing in the sense that it exposes me to something, then absolutely let me know with this. But I've been having a lot of success with it. Our opponent is looking to turn our hips one way to be able to expose our back. So as Kevin gets me into this position here, as he applies pressure into my right leg, it turns me to my right, exposing my back this way. My hips turn that way, which then causes my back to move that direction. Sometimes, depending on the angle my opponent's already gotten, driving up towards the ankle this way just doesn't make sense. Like if he's already gotten a little bit of this angle here on me where we're no longer parallel, and I start to try and apply pressure out this way, you can see that it actually just extends my hips out this way and helps him rotate me. So I am no longer parallel with our spines and able to start adjusting the angle myself. So as this starts to happen, what I'm going to look to do is actually start to turn my hips this direction. He wants to turn me to my right. I'm saying screw that. I'm turning to my left and I'm starting to bring my knee down here. So I'm actually starting to internally rotate my hip a little bit here, flaring my foot outwards this direction, bring myself here. I still want to be very careful about a calf slicer because if my ankle is too close here, this is still a pain in the ass. And because I've turned myself, if he does get that calf slicer grip, it's a little more difficult now for me to bring my left leg in here because his knee's closer, his hips are closer, his elbow's close to the ground here. Versus here where if he grabs that calf slicer grip, there's usually a lot more space for me to work to be able to bring my foot in. So I want to be very careful here that I'm curling my knee in a little bit here, flaring my leg out towards his ankle, but I'm still keeping my leg out exposed here. You can see that I've still bent Kevin up in a direction now that if he tries to curl into me, I still have a strong leg press motion and curl, but his ability now to bring my hips up and over to the other side where he wants to take me is going to be much more difficult. And then we're still going to be just trying to do the same thing. Once I've gotten to this place, controlling the knee, framing at the back of the hip, and I look to put my leg in base and start walking my hips out to the side. And now you can see how I start to actually create the T configuration for myself to start taking the back. So here, Kevin starts to get a bit of an angle where I do not feel comfortable here. I'm curling, I'm bringing him down here. This arm comes over top of his hip if it needs to, and I'm looking to control here because we're potentially going to start coming up into a turtle battle here because you can see how much I have curled him and bent him this direction up onto his right shoulder. That is much more encouraging for him at this point to actually back roll. And if my elbow is still across his center line like this, now my back is exposed and he's going to be able to start setting up different movements immediately. So what I want to be able to do is make sure that I'm controlling his hips enough that he's unable to actually get behind me. So as we're here, he's got the shin in the back of my knee. I'm losing this battle. He's starting to extend me. He might even be extending me up like this direction where I now can't really curl into him very effectively because my force is going to be driving up into the air. So here, I start to go this direction like this while I control his hips. You can see how I've started creating a bit of an angle here, but his hips are starting to move and turn. By me controlling here, if he starts to back roll, I'm coming up immediately into turtle here. Just because I'm controlling his hips doesn't mean that I can hold this forever, especially with one arm, because if he comes up further and now brings his knee behind my hips, his left knee, you can see how he can take that angle and still get behind my back. So if it's moving to this direction, I recommend going fully into a crotch lock here, and we obviously have to adjust our angle, and we're moving straight into actual turtle attacks now. But really strong turtle attacks because I'm already controlling the space in between his legs and in between his shoulders and hips. So here he starts to extend, gets that angle. I'm moving here. This hand's controlling at the hip. I move myself up, turn my knee in. I now do the same thing where because I've turned my knee in and flared my foot out a bit this way, I extend a little bit out to the side, out towards that ankle to access the lever to open his leg up slightly. Adjust my hip angle to get behind. One more angle. So here he starts to extend and get behind me slightly. I'm just looking to bring my knee up and curl myself this direction, opposite direction. So remember the rotation. He extends me, I turn to my right. So if I turn myself more to my left here, his ability to now make me travel that distance is very difficult, and I've messed up his angle. From here,
extending out like this. Try and move me, Kevin. If he does start to move me, that's where controlling the hip and framing like this behind the hip here, using my forearm as a post. Try and drop your hips to the ground, Kevin. He has to walk his hips back to be able to deal with this, which he can do, but I'm going to be able to keep adjusting. And if I can keep his hips lifted like this, very difficult for him to do anything. From here, curling, adjusting, and then as I'm here, if he chooses the back roll, I'm coming up and grabbing the hips and preferably stopping him from getting into turtle completely so that I can now pull him back into a strong truck position and look to finish taking the back. We have a very dominant angle and a very strong position, so preferably we don't let our opponent get up into an athletic position or into proper alignment where they're going to be able to generate force and be much more mobile with their hips. So that's just going to be getting used to recognizing the timing of it, but it's two very distinct directions where our opponent's trying to turn left into us, or our opponent's trying to turn right away from us to get to turtle, and it's a long distance to travel, and it should be quite easy for you to take their back from there.